It's a proposed wealth tax on California billionaires sparking a high-stakes debate over inequality in the state's innovation economy. One Democrat speaking out against the proposed measure joins us right now, San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan. Good morning to you. We've been having this debate, and it's been playing out not just in your own state, but in some ways across the country. We've had a number of folks from Silicon Valley on our broadcast, and of course, there's a debate going on in your state. Why don't we start with just explaining your position on this? And I'm very curious not only about your own position, but how you think about your position as it relates to some of the more progressive players in the state right now.
Sure. Well, as the mayor of the largest city in Silicon Valley, I'm deeply concerned by a proposal that is coming from a place of genuine concern about economic inequality. That's a real issue. It's an issue that deserves serious response. I don't think that our political leaders at a federal level have done enough to address economic inequality, but I think there are better alternatives, other ways of closing tax loopholes and generating revenue and leveling the playing field for folks. I'm worried that the unintended consequences of this proposed wealth tax could be devastating for our innovation economy here in Silicon Valley, the state's finances, ironically. I think this may ultimately push the burden onto working and middle-class families as this proposed tax generates capital flight. We're already seeing that.
What do you think the chances are that it actually passes?
I think it can be defeated because at the end of the day, Californians have common sense. And when they hear the arguments and understand the potential implications, I think it won't pass. But the damage is already being done. We've seen multiple billionaires, job creators, including Larry Page, the co-founder of one of California's most iconic companies, leave the state. This is going to have long-term consequences, and it's a problem. It's ironically, Silicon Valley is a model for economic mobility, upward mobility and opportunity. My dad was a letter carrier, and I came here and worked in the tech industry myself, and that's how I broke into the middle class in many ways. And so I think that the unintended consequences of this misguided proposal could be devastating for the state and its working and middle class families.
You know Ro Khanna. We've had him on this broadcast many times. He has walked a tightrope, given his constituency for a very long time, both trying to support the tech community in some ways, but also being on a more progressive, almost Bernie Sanders kind of left, if you will. And now there is some talk that there could be an effort afoot to try to oust him. What do you know about that?
Well, I've been approached about challenging Congressman Khanna, which is not something I'm interested in doing. One thing I'll say for the congressman is that he engages in robust debate and back and forth with anyone, which I really respect. I know he's listening. I know he's talking to a number of tech leaders and entrepreneurs, and I sincerely hope he reconsiders his position. You know, though, Congressman Khanna said something that is really important in his back and forth with Governor Newsom, who himself on this issue I think has shown real political courage by also pointing to the reality of what could happen. But Congressman Khanna's point about waste, fraud, and abuse in government is right on. I'm glad he's talking about that because just in the last few years in California alone, credible sources estimate that we've had $20 to $30 billion in fraudulent unemployment claims, huge amounts of waste in our healthcare system. So I think we ought to ask government to do better before we ask taxpayers to pay more. California is a high tax state, has a very progressive tax structure. In fact, the top 1% of income earners generate 40% of the income tax revenue in California already. So let's close loopholes, but also realize that there's a lot of waste and fraud in government that we ought to be going after first before we put our innovation economy at risk.
We were, I don't know if your ears were burning, but we were talking about you the other day, and I think maybe your quote, I didn't misinterpret it, but it sort of sticks in my craw when you say, yeah, it would feel good up front to get rid of all these billionaires. I think you were more or less talking about certain people that look at billionaires that way. But I think it's misplaced. I think it's dangerous. I think billionaire envy is misplaced and stupid. And I don't think billionaires are responsible for the inequality. In fact, I think if there was any group of people that are in a position to maybe help with wealth inequality, it's job creators and wealth creators where shareholders benefit, and then, you know, the employees these guys create, or guys and gals create, then pay taxes, and then those taxes can be used to try to equalize opportunity for the people that are getting the short end of the stick. And
right.
So I don't even like acknowledging that there is a good reason to hate billionaires. I think it's stupid and misplaced and misguided. Don't say.
Well, let me comment
on
on that. Yeah,
okay.
so fair enough. And I look, I'm not saying it feels good to me. I'm trying to figure out how to empathize with those who are proposing this. And the reality is there is real economic pain and uncertainty out there. Cost of living is the biggest issue on people's minds. And the reality is that these are public policy failures that are leading people to grasp for policies that are going to backfire. We need to get out of the way and build more housing. We need energy abundance to bring down costs. We need to do things to make people feel that.
Are you a Democrat, Matt? Matt, you're a Democrat?
What's that?
You're a Democrat?
Yes.
Nope.
I am.
Seriously?
I am, because I think government has a role to play in providing public goods that the market won't otherwise provide.
You make a lot of sense, but you can't move back here and run for New York City mayor. No,
that I can't help you with. Good luck.
Nobody can. Nobody can help us with that. Yeah.
So, Matt, the other piece of this, I don't know if you, we had Robert Frank on earlier this week. There's a question mark, and this is a technical issue, about whether you believe possibly even those folks who have potentially already left, the Peter Thiels of the world or the Larry Pages of the world, that almost retroactively this could get counted, if you will, meaning that they could be on the hook, even having left, depending on how you look at the dates. Have you focused on any of the technical issues? Because I think there's a lot of people who are focused on that right now.
Well, I think you're right, and you know, I don't know the answer. I suspect it'll have to be litigated, but that very kind of uncertainty is destructive already. And I think there was a rush to leave the state before December 31st or January 1st because folks felt that that date was the point at which it would be retroactive to if it were to pass. I think it can be defeated, but it's one more sign that California's political leaders are and powers that be, powerful interest groups in the state, don't really understand and respect how the economy works and how we, to the earlier point, how wealth is generated, opportunities created. But we also have to look in the mirror and recognize these proposals don't come from nowhere. People are feeling uncertainty and fear. Cost of living in California is out of control. They've just misdiagnosed the problem. And it's up to us as public leaders to own the problem and say, we're going to build more housing. We're going to invest in infrastructure to help you get around more efficiently.
Here's a tax question for you. So one of the things, you can be against a wealth tax, and I've had lots of questions about whether a wealth tax makes sense for a lot of reasons, because of the issues of actually having to realize the gains, which are not realized in this case. How do you feel about, for example, a lot of folks who've made an extraordinary amount of money in California, who effectively take loans out against the stock so that they never pay taxes, or that they don't pay taxes until they pass their wealth on to their children at death, and then, of course, that gets, quote unquote, stepped up, and then there's effectively a massive missing piece of tax along the way, even though I do recognize that actually at death there is a tax, but it is a much smaller tax.
That's right. Well, I think you've pointed to the primary loophole I'd like to see closed. Now, I think it has to be closed at a federal level, and I'd encourage Congressman Khanna to focus on pursuing this at the federal level where he represents us here in Silicon Valley. But, yeah, you shouldn't be able to indefinitely borrow against your unrealized gains as a way of avoiding ever paying taxes on those gains. And I think Bill Ackman's had a good proposal on how to address that. It makes sense. That would be the first loophole I'd look to close. It's not the only loophole. And back to my earlier point, we also have to be honest that there is a lot of waste in government and outright fraud. And so it's not either or. We need to close loopholes. We need to make government better. But let's not pursue tax policy that is going to backfire. And we've seen it. This has played out before. A dozen European countries have tried wealth taxes. I believe 9 of them have already rolled them back. The majority of them actually reduced their overall tax base because people respond to incentives.